From a highly charged but peaceful political period to record-breaking drought, the year 2022 was eventful. But the Kenyan economy remained unscathed. What does the year 2023 hold for the economy? Hello there and welcome to the 2022 in Review. My name is O'Brien Kimani. In the next 1 hour or two, I'll be taking through the events that shaped the year in the business world. Welcome to the show again. The rising inflation on account of higher food and fuel prices, coupled with a weak shilling, piled pressure on Kenyan households this year. Despite the economic growth remaining at 5.5%, the high cost of living dampened the spirit of millions of Kenyans, even as the government removed fuel and maize flour subsidies. Wairi Mujenga explains how the Kenyan economy weathered so many challenges to remain strong and the headwinds that lies ahead.
The year comes to a close at a time the Kenyan economy is battling the rapid tightening of monetary policy in advanced economies, particularly the US, the ongoing war in Ukraine, and the lingering inflationary challenges. Although pressures are easing in some major economies, supply-side pressures remain elevated, mainly leading to higher energy prices. The economy remained strong in the last quarter of 2022 at 5.5%, supported by the services sector despite subdued performance in the agriculture and weaker global growth. There was a robust activity in transport and storage, wholesale and trade, information and communication, real estate and financial and insurance.
The leading indicators for Q2 point to continued good performance, even against the uncertainties for the related to, let's say, the political calendar. And I think taken together and looking at various indicators, the economy is expected to remain resilient in 2022 at 5.4%. That is our current estimate.
I believe that by embracing innovation, we can reimagine and overhaul our economy into a modern, high-tech, one serviced by highly skilled citizens who enjoy a high quality of life.
While Kenya's economy has been resilient, commodity price shocks resulting from the war in Ukraine disrupted production and trade of several commodities such as fuel, cooking oil, fertilizer, wheat and other food inputs. Soaring food prices together with runaway energy costs have been the major drivers of inflation in 2022. This year saw Kenyans dig deeper into their pockets to pay for basic commodities, especially foodstuff.
Chakula kila mahali imepanda. Ukiangalia bei ya unga kwa saizi imefika shilingi 250 kwingine 230 na hii ina affect kila mtu.
Those in authority to try to leverage and try to reduce the cost of living.
They saw the overall inflation jump to a high of 9.6% in October, before easing marginally in November at 9.5%, the fast decline in 10 months, on the back of a drop in food and fuel prices. Central Bank Governor Patrick Njoroge said Kenya's inflation rate will remain above the government's target range till early next year, and then ease back towards it on the back of policy measures. President William Ruto, through the bottom-up economic model, vowed to revamp the economy, uplift the poor, lower the cost of living and create jobs for the youth, expand the tax base, improve on the foreign exchange balance and inclusive growth.
Provide them good space for them to do their enterprise, build good markets, make sure that they have a decent space to operate from, make sure that there is law that protects their business. They are not running from Kanjo and the rest of the guys. Those people can move from $2-3 to $6-7 per day.
On the revenue side, KRA for the first time in Kenya's history hit and surpassed the 2 trillion shillings revenue collection mark. Revenue collection in the 2021-2022 financial year, which ended on June 30th, reached a new record of 2.031 trillion shillings growth compared to 1.7 trillion collected in the previous year. President William Ruto tasked the taxman to double the collection and to adopt a friendlier but more efficient tax administration system as part of his strategy to increase compliance levels in an economy dominated by the informal sector.
Urgently need to expand our tax base, our job creation agenda, and the capitalization of our SMEs will go a long way in broadening our tax bracket. We will make KRA more professional, efficient, responsive, and people-friendly. I urge taxpayers to respond by undertaking their patriotic duty and pay their taxes.
The president noted that Kenya's revenue collection only accounts for 14% of the country's gross domestic product. GDP, while in other middle-income countries, the figure is as high as 25%.
GDP has risen to Kenya shillings 12 trillion, yet KRA only raised about 14% of GDP in revenues last year. In the past, KRA was able to raise 18% of GDP. If we collect the same target today, then we would have raised an extra 400 billion shillings, and to double the current collection in 5 years.
The new administration vowed to reduce the national budget deficit and cut debt that is at 8.4 trillion shillings, with 4.2 trillion shillings covering external and domestic debt, respectively.
So, for instance, when we were going through the COVID-19 and basically we couldn't raise that much revenues, etc., the only way we could get away with it was to borrow. So we borrowed concessional funds from the IMF, the World Bank. You know, it is 20, 30, 40 years repayment, 2%, actually less than 2% interest, etc. So very concessional.
The external debt burden worsened due to the persistent fall in the value of the Kenya shilling and the economic slump that followed the COVID-19 restrictions. The shilling has been on a free fall against major currencies in the last 16 months, oscillating between 119 shillings and 122 shillings, a drop of 6% this year. According to the National Treasury, the state is on a fiscal consolidation path to ensure the country preserves its debt sustainability as it races to gradually reduce expenditures to about 22.7% of GDP over the medium term. President Ruto has vowed to dump expensive commercial loans and tap concessionary loans. The government also plans to mobilize domestic savings to raise the figure from 7% of the gross domestic product to 30% envisioned in the country's long-term development blueprint Vision 2030.
The reason why we have borrowed heavily from others is because we haven't been prudent in savings for our own nation. We cannot continue to borrow from the savings of others. If we must borrow, let us borrow from our own savings so that we can pay interest to our own savers and we can build our country using our own savings.
Analysts say economic growth will be subdued in the medium term as a drought abates and supply-side demands ease out. Wairi Mujenga for the end of year.
Well, that is exactly how the Kenyan economy fared despite strong headwinds. The question is, what lies ahead in the year 2023? Peter Macharia is an economist, he's a financial advisor, and also he's the CEO of Jijenge Credit. He's now joining us on the search for more analysis. Thank you very much indeed, Peter, for joining us here. What would you say defined the Kenyan economy in the year 2022?
Thank you, Brian. I think the most important thing that affected the Kenyan economy is, number one, the elections that were held in August, and part of the drought effects, where we had locusts and a few things that affected the economy. And of course, the fluctuation of the fuel prices, which were fluctuating on the upward trend.
We also saw a record weakening of the Kenyan shilling against the dollar. How bad was this, especially for the financial sector?
Well, it was quite bad, but well managed, because the fluctuation didn't go overboard. The CBK and the Monetary Committee did an excellent job of trying to stabilize the shilling against the dollar and ensuring that our balance of trade is not so much affected in terms of exports and imports. Yes.
You are in the credit markets. How was it impacted by, the harsh economic climate?
Well, the credit market was affected, especially most on the agricultural sector, which was affected by drought, which meant that the productivity of the Kenyan farmers was a bit low, and therefore we were not even exporting a lot. And by extension, the loans they had borrowed, the loan repayments were a bit low, and there were so many rescheduling, so many loan extensions, and so many restructuring of loans borrowed under the agricultural sector.
Were you forced to somehow restructure your loan portfolio? And did you see a spike in the number of non-performing loans?
Definitely yes, because we had COVID earlier on, which was quickly followed now by the drought effects. And as we were trying to stabilize after COVID, the drought came on board, and the restructuring and the rescheduling of those facilities that were under the agricultural sector and segment was had to kick in.
Let's also look at the election. I mean, quite highly charged and very competitive, but eventually it's ended up being one of the most peaceful elections in the history of this country. Do we see any reactions of the economy based on what was happening from the political front?
Well, the most important thing is the peaceful elections, because in the past we've had elections, but they ended up being very volatile, and there were business losses, destruction of property, migration of human beings being evicted from one area to the other, and that one had a very big impact on the economy, because it actually disrupted the entire business sector, the flow of cash and business activities. But this time we had a very peaceful election. There was continuity in business, and the effects were minimal.
And when you look at how the Central Bank of Kenya managed the weakening shilling, the rising inflation, by raising the benchmark rate, do you feel the Central Bank did enough to cushion Kenyans from the harsh economic times?
Very well. CBK did an excellent job, because if you look at the other world economies, the effects of COVID and the fluctuating dollar rate, the effects were quite harsh. I know of several economies in the world which crashed, but the Kenyan economy has been very stable, very well managed, and we are looking forward to even better times in the coming year.
And when you talk about the year 2023, which is a few hours from now, what do you think is going to shape the Kenyan economy, the performance of the economy in the year 2023?
Number one is the growth of, or rather the special emphasis being given to the SMEs. And one of the interventions has been the Hustler Fund, which is geared towards trying to rejuvenate, revive, and facilitate startups. That will be a very big driver to the Kenyan economy. There's agricultural subsidies, and that's another way of kickstarting the vibrancy of the agricultural sector. Yes.
I want you to give us, your own projections for the economic growth in the year 2023. Different entities are talking about different numbers. The World Bank is talking about 6.5%. The National Treasury is also talking about 6.9 to 7%. What would be your projection?
I like being very optimistic, and I would give it even 7%.
7%.
That should be the growth rate for the Kenyan economy, because one, Kenyans are very resilient, very optimistic, and very hardworking people. Yes.
Very good. 2023 we shall be here, and of course we shall review whether your projections will come to pass.
True.
Very good.
Thank you.
Well, a record-breaking drought that affected more than 30 counties in Kenya, and of course impacting negatively the food security of more than 20 million Kenyans, as well as lifting of the ban on the importation and cultivation of genetically modified food, were some of the highlights in the agriculture sector. Benson Rioba has more details.
In October this year, the government lifted the ban on importation and distribution of genetically modified foods, ending a 10-year ban. In a dispatch, the cabinet said the move to lift the GMO ban was informed by the studies and advice from different stakeholders, including the National Biosafety Authority.
If there will be need to bring GMO maize, we will do it, because the cabinet has decided that we must lift the ban. But remember, even if we were to get there are certain protocols that guide use our importation of GMO. There are those Cartagena protocols, those that I want to research and get to know about.
The lifting of the GMO ban came just months after the government allowed the importation of yellow maize with traces of GMO after feed millers were unable to find non-GMO maize in the international market. The lifting of the ban has seen a back and forth between the pro and anti-GMO proponents that culminated to a court case that saw the High Court stopping the importation and distribution of GMO foods.
No country in the world has reached the development status without using science, technology, and innovation. Countries that have used biotechnology, they have made tremendous improvements in their food security, in their environmental sustainability.
Tunakashifu kitendo cha rais na baraza lake la mawaziri kuondoa ile marufuku ya GMO pasi na kuwahusisha stakeholders wote.
This idea of having GMO foods that can be produced and produced fast and in plenty to feed the ever-increasing population is a very welcome idea.
Tell me whether there's any standard that checks the safety of the GMOs that are going to be produced or are going to be imported to this country. Do they have the standards? Have they developed that? What we are saying is, what is the rush for?
Hii GMO sio solution. Na kwa wale ambao wanasema kwamba wanasayansi ndio wanatengeneza, wanasayansi ndio wanajua, mambo ya tumbo hayana sayansi. Tumbo lako ni tumbo lako, tumbo langu ni tumbo langu.
Organic food is for the swag, for somebody to feel that I'm eating it alone. The same way we have Pro Boxes and we have Range Rovers. It's about liking. Organic food is it's not for food security. It is for swag and feeling that you're okay.
The High Court ruling saw the government vacate its earlier decision to allow importation of 10 million bags of BT maize.
I'm signing a gazette notice to allow for importation of up to 10 million bags of maize, duty-free, for the next 6 months until we achieve food security. Because that is our cardinal responsibility as government. I know this may offend some people, both from a GMO and from importation, but I will do this, and we will do this as government. Even if it's not, we lose some votes here and there, but at least we'll see the kingdom of heaven.
The government also said it will appeal the High Court decision, insisting that all constitution procedures, including stakeholders' consultation, were adhered to before the ban was lifted. Agriculture Cabinet Secretary Mithika Linturi says there will be a 7-month maize import window that will allow millers import 10 million 90 kg bags of maize. Linturi says the import window is meant to stabilize food prices in the country, since this year's maize harvest is estimated to be below average due to drought and expensive fertilizer.
No farmer complain anywhere about anything, because it's my responsibility as the Minister of Agriculture to protect my farmers. It is me who is running up and down to see how to subsidize inputs so that they can bring down the cost of production of food. And I have also a responsibility as Minister to ensure the country has food to eat.
Fertilizer prices have been high since the start of 2022 on account of high global prices. The global prices were driven by scarcity in the markets due to the Russian-Ukraine conflict that saw countries hoard the chemical, leading to scarcity. Fertilizer prices increased to a record high of 7,000 shillings in some regions, up from 2,500 shillings. The then Agriculture Cabinet Secretary Peter Munya said the ministry needed 31 billion shillings to fully subsidize fertilizer in the country during both the short and the long rains. However, the National Treasury disbursed 5.7 billion shillings to subsidize 2.28 million 50 kg bags of fertilizer for the short rains.
Given the circumstances and now even the war in that region, Russia and Ukraine, the prices could even go further. The rise in fertilizer prices is due to the impact of COVID-19, which led to fertilizer producing countries such as China, Russia and Turkey restricting exports to protect their farmers, and heavy consumers such as India, Brazil and USA buying large quantities, hence creating market scarcity. If this trend continues, DAP prices may go as far as 7,000 Kenya shillings per bag. We would require a total of that 1 billion, 851, 916,000 if we were to take those prices that prevailed at some point in time.
The government is still keen on sustaining the fertilizer subsidy program, with President William Ruto announcing that they seek to import 300,000 metric tons of fertilizer to lower the cost of food production.
To that end, by December, by this month, end of this month, the first consignment of fertilizer that will be used by our farmers next year will be arriving in the country. We have made necessary interventions. I am looking forward to working with the minister, the PS, and the bureaucracy in the Ministry of Agriculture. We have a program to import 300,000 metric tons of assorted fertilizer so that we can assist our farmers produce and we can deal decisively with the challenge of cost of food by ensuring that we enhance our productivity and we expand our production so that we can drive hunger out of our country.
To further shore up the country's food security and reduce the country's food import bill, the government has pledged to construct 100 dams through a public-private partnership arrangement. This is expected to put 3 million acres under irrigation in the short term.
And to address this challenge, we are working on innovative investment mechanisms through public-private partnership to construct at least 100 dams. Consequently, it would be possible to progressively irrigate the 3 million acres already identified as irrigable land.
This as Kenya and UK agreed on a deal that will see construction of a multi-purpose dam built in Kitui and Tharaka Nithi at a cost of 425 billion shillings. The development comes as the 7.8 billion shilling Thiba Dam was officially launched in October after its commissioning 4 years ago. Thiba Dam is expected to increase acreage under rise in Mwea irrigation scheme from 10,000 to 35,000 acres.
On behalf of the government and people of Kenya,
to the government and people of Japan our gratitude for the support and the partnership that has made it possible for us to construct this dam that is going to increase water for our farmers and bring on board an extra 10,000 acres under rice irrigation.
Finally, Kenya is experiencing the worst drought in 40 years that has pushed up the prices of foodstuffs due to suppressed agricultural production. This saw the government initiate the livestock off-take program to support the pastoralist community that are incurring heavy losses from the drought.
Tumeweka pesa ya kununua ng'ombe, ndio hizo ng'ombe zichinjwe, wananchi wapewe nyama, zile zingine zipelekwe KMC, iwekwe kwa mikebe, na hiyo nyama tuletee kwa watoto wetu kwa mashule, ndio tuweze kusaidiana. Kwa hivyo hiyo program itakuwa ikiendelea na itaendelea kila pahali.
The drought has also affected the regional countries where Kenya imports its food to fill its deficits. This has seen the price of a 90 kg bag of maize retail at between 5,000 shillings to a high of 7,000 shillings in some regions, pushing up the price of maize flour.
It's a problem of this region because of the droughts and the disruptions that came with those challenges of COVID, locusts, all those challenges that we have been facing as a region. Does that mean we are not alive to it as a government? We don't want to do something? No, we are doing.
The drought also saw pasture dwindle, further affecting the livestock sector that led the price of dairy products increase considerably. Benson Druba reporting for NDR.
Well, those are some of the dynamics that shaped the agriculture sector, not only here in Kenya, but the region as well as the world. We continue our analysis. Remember, this is the end of the year review. You're watching it from Kenya Broadcasting Corporation. Peter Macharia is an economist, he's a financial analyst, as well as the CEO of Jijenge Credit. He's helping us to put everything here into perspective. Peter Macharia, again, thank you for your time. I want to hear from you. The economy, of course, was heavily impacted by the drought that affected more than half of Kenyans. Do you see the impacts of this drought dragging on to the year 2023?
Thank you, Brian. The impact definitely will be there because the drought affected most of the farmers, and also some areas, and by extension, the production was also very low.
And of course, we saw the government coming up with various interventions, from the lifting of GMO ban to the importation, to the duty-free importation of maize, and of course, the enhanced distribution of relief food. Do you think the measures that the government put in place to ameliorate the drought situation in the country were sufficient?
Yes, they are sufficient because the interventions they made of subsidizing fertilizer, which will by extension increase the production of maize and other food crops. And also, as we wait for the food that was complemented by that fertilizer intervention to grow and be sold out, they also imported, and they have allowed importation of 100 metric tons of maize, so that by the time the maize is mature, that gap, that deficit is covered, is catered for.
At least now, many parts of the country is now experiencing the impact of the short rains. Do you think this will have an impact on the cost of food in the year 2023?
Definitely yes, because the production will be quite high. The short rains will increase the production also, and the imported maize also will reduce the cost of maize substantially. It will be a big plus to the cost of unga, which will reduce substantially and help manage it to a very manageable level. Hopefully it will be 70 shillings per packet.
Oh, you project that, unga will come down to 70 shillings from the current retail of about 220 shillings. Very good projections there. We hope they will definitely come to pass. I also want to hear from you. What would you suggest should be the long-term measures to help deal with the issues of drought in the country?
Number one is the support of a continuous support of the subsidies in fertilizer, and also in the seed inputs or whatever input farmers use. Number two is to look at increased ways of increasing the irrigation schemes, either through the rivers or boreholes or whatever method the government is set to use. And then the other intervention, the third intervention should be the cost of inputs. Tractors, equipment. If it is possible, the government should reduce, they should be zero rated in terms of duty.
And when you look at agriculture, I mean, it contributes almost 25% to Kenya's GDP. The government has announced measures to construct 100 dams in the country, as well as enhance irrigation in this country. Do you think these measures alone are enough?
Well, it's a good start. There's no measure that is bad. It's a good start because the other measures that will be complemented either by the county governments and NGOs and people who support farmers, they will take us a long way.
So what do you think is going to be the highlights in the agriculture sector in the year 2023?
Number one is the subsidies. Number two is the increase in production. And then number three is the interventions of irrigation schemes, dams, and any other intervention that the government is supporting the farmers with.
The tourism industry in Kenya made a major comeback, with arrivals recording a 91.3% increase in the first 9 months of the year 2022. Players in the sector are saying that the sector will continue to remain vibrant going forward as more tourists make their way into the Kenyan market.
2022 was an election year, and this caused a stir among hospitality industry players. Data from previous election years indicated that tourists opted to cancel their trips to the country on such years. So what strategies did Kenya employ to ensure that tourist arrivals and earnings remained on an upward trajectory in 2022?
Election years have recorded low tourist numbers for Kenya. 2022 was a different case, with the industry still yet to hit the pre-COVID numbers.
It has always been my dream to come to Kenya. I've heard amazing things about this beautiful country, and I am not disappointed by any means.
Industry players were wary that any disruption this year would adversely affect the numbers.
The number of tourists coming to the Mara this year has grown up as compared to the last 2 years that saw the effect of the COVID-19 pandemic. Occupancies are looking great all the way to October, and we are hoping and praying that it will continue all the year round.
Industry players were out early with messages promoting Destination Kenya by urging tourists not to cancel their bookings, assuring travelers that Kenya was a safe destination. This strategy paid off, and Kenya recorded a 91.3% increase in the number of international tourists visiting the country in the year to August. The high season, characterized by the wildebeest migration from Tanzania's Serengeti to the Masai Mara, saw July record the highest numbers on monthly arrivals at 149,411, which slightly went down to 132,031 in August, an indication that the international market remained confident about Kenya despite it being a general election year.
As our projection, we project that we will reach 1.4 million people
by end of the year of a range of 267 billion Kenya shillings revenue.
Data compiled by the Tourism Research Institute showed holidaying remained the main purpose of visiting Kenya by international tourists. A total of 313,466 visitors were in Kenya for holiday, followed by those visiting family and friends at 274,722. Business and MICE meetings, incentives, conferencing and exhibition equally remained strong with 258,889 arrivals.
Want to start building a program for art tourism where you can come all the way down here on Kenyatta Road, Gatondo, and actually watch a theater in an amphitheater.
Visitors to niche markets, including education purposes, were at 16,196. Those for religion were at 8,459, and 7,833 visited Kenya for medical attention.
The best bit about the theater is that we are in a green space, so the tranquility itself, the calmness in the area, basically makes it the best place to have your performing arts.
Buyu ulikuwa najua imefika sababu ndege zimeanza kuiba. Na hiyo wimbo ilikuanga mzuri sana. Hata hapa utakuwa na bird watching.
The United States remained the leading international tourist source market during the period under review, while neighboring Uganda had the second highest arrivals, mainly visiting Kenya for business. The UK was third, followed by Tanzania, India, Germany, Rwanda, Somalia, Ethiopia and France, closing the top 10 list.
The people want to come, to see, to go on safari and to go in the beautiful beach.
The third edition of the Keep Keno Classic in Nairobi in May attracted 1,362 sports enthusiasts, underscoring the importance of sporting events to arrivals.
And as a Jamaican, we are known for sprinting, and we definitely want to be in a country that embraces us and supports us as athletes, and why not come to Kenya?
In Kenya, I'm really happy to be here. I can't wait to compete. I know the track is really fast. I have a good competition. It's a really good competition, and I can't wait to compete.
The key highlight was sprinter Ferdinand Omanyala winning the race to the joy of home fans after the government waived entry fees to the Moi Sports Centre, Kasarani. Another key sporting attraction was the WRC that returned to Kenya in 2021 after 20 years. In June, former President Uhuru Kenyatta flagged off the teams participating in the event that was held in Naivasha. Naivasha's stunning picturesque scenery and exotic wildlife were the classic features of the Safari Rally Kenya that attracted international rally drivers, providing a mix of local and international sports tourists. Other sporting events, including the annual Magical Kenya Open Golf Tournament and the 9-day East African Classic. In November, there was a dent on the tourism industry when the Kenya Airways pilots staged a 4-day strike that affected 10,000 passengers.
The persistent harassment and intimidation towards pilots agitating for their rights serves more to agonize than inspire confidence.
So unfortunately, because of their hard stance, because they have given us their original proposals without any meaningful concessions, we therefore have a stalemate.
Today we were supposed to go to Mauritius for our honeymoon, but that's going to be cancelled. So yeah, it's all good. We'll be fine.
Was today very early in the morning to London, and it was cancelled. And there was no any communication. We went through the website and we saw that the trip has been cancelled.
The strike is just awful because it affects so many people, and people that are stuck, then what do?
In December, the national carrier launched 3 routes between Mombasa and Dubai, as well as Nairobi and Milan.
We must be strategic in offering the best and most attractive packages to beat our competitors if this route is to break even.
The launch of the Kenya Airways Mombasa-Dubai flight comes at an opportune moment when 2 interrelated discourses dominate conversation in Africa: the open skies for Africa under single Africa air transport market and inter-Africa trade. As market leaders, we must strive to be part of this conversation.
The national carrier that flies to Accra in Ghana also announced a flight linking Accra in Ghana and Dakar in Senegal. Budget carrier Silverstone announced a new route between Nairobi and Lodwar. Regina Manyara reporting for KBC Channel 1.
Well, we continue our analysis, especially in the tourism industry. And now joining us again is Peter Macharia, an economist, a financial analyst, as well as the CEO of Jijenge Credit. Thank you very much, Peter, for your continued time with us here. What would you say shaped the tourism industry in Kenya?
Thank you. Number one thing is that we need to embrace is that tourism is a backbone of the Kenyan economy. And therefore, the thing that shaped the tourism industry in Kenya in the year 2022 is peace. Because chaos disrupted the tourism sector. But this year around, the peaceful elections were a major showstopper in terms of continuous inflow of tourists. There are no advisories that were issued by international countries, and therefore the continued flow of tourists helped a lot. And therefore we look forward to a prosperous and successful and vibrant tourism sector come 2023.
And of course, we also saw a major growth in domestic tourism. Do you see this trend being sustained?
Definitely, yes. As the economy maintains its vibrancy, the Kenyan tourists, the local tourists, will have disposable income to use in the local tourist destinations. Yes.
What do you think should happen to, especially the local tourism industry, in order for players to attract more visitors?
The first thing that we need to put in place in the local tourism industry is to create more outlets, more game ranches, allow privateers to venture into the same line of conservancy, wildlife conservancies, and also encourage and pump in some additional finance into the Ministry of Wildlife and conservatory centers within the country.
And do you think that Kenyans are aware of the product that the tourism sector has to offer that are well suited for the Kenyan market?
Yes, but there's still room for better marketing, better knowledge dissemination, because the ministry needs to come up with a local brand, a brand ambassador who can ensure that they remain Kenyans, that we have enough game ranches, we have enough local tourist destinations, so that as we fly out and encourage more tourists to come in, we have also done the same locally.
And going forward, what do you think will shape the tourism industry in the year 2023?
Number one is the brand, the Kenyan brand, or rather uplifting the Kenyan brand. And I know the government and the president is doing a lot to encourage tourists. The number of trips they've done outside, the number one thing I know they are doing is to encourage both local and foreign tourists to flow in, and also manage the dollar exchange rate against the foreign currencies, because that's another thing, that's another negative part that affects the tourism industry.
Very well. Thank you very much indeed, Macharia. Well, turning on to the ICT sector, where Kenya became one of the few countries in Africa to roll out the much talked about fifth generation network. The country also rolled out a 10-year master plan to deepen ICT, expand infrastructure and position the country as an African technology hub. These were some of the major milestones covered in the ICT sector in the year 2022 as narrated by our reporter Alan Aoko.
After years of trial, Safaricom became the first telco in the region to roll out the 5G technology, thrusting Kenya as one of the 5 countries in Africa that have rolled out the technology. The listed company unveiled its 5th generation network on October 27th, aiming to connect 10,000 homes and businesses by March next year. Safaricom chief Peter Ndegwa said the technology will help the telco deliver the most advanced technologies towards enabling its customers to enjoy a digital lifestyle.
We've always prided ourselves to combining the power of innovation and technology, or the power of technology and innovation to solve societal challenges, but also customer issues. Over the past 22 years, we've invested in our network and leveraged the power of mobile technology.
However, experts raised concerns with the cost of 5G-ready phones, where out of the 27 million smartphones in Kenya, only about 200,000 are 5G-enabled. Ndegwa said the company will work out a handset purchase plan with phone makers to make them accessible. Kenya marked another milestone in the tech world when it launched one of the most progressive ICT strategies in Africa, which seeks to transform the country into an ICT hub in Africa. The Kenya National Digital Master Plan 2022-2032 aims to leverage and deepen the contribution of ICT in Kenya to accelerate economic growth. The master plan incorporates the use of emerging technologies such as blockchain, the Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, big data, and quantum computing.
This master plan will outline a structured roadmap on the delivery of ICT infrastructure and services, as well as the development of ICT skills. It will also provide guidance on investment priorities to both local and external investors.
The document outlines various measures to be put in place to deploy 100,000 kilometers of fiber optic infrastructure to 40,000 public schools and other learning institutions. The master plan, which will be rolled out at a cost of 1 trillion shillings, will also connect 20,000 government institutions, 13,000 health facilities, 25,000 hotspots to support youth and innovators, and the establishment of 1,450 digital innovation hubs. In the year under review, the country also embarked on cleaning out the country's mobile subscriber base by deactivating unregistered SIM cards. Under the new regulation, mobile operators were required by the Communications Authority of Kenya to update customers' details with a digital passport-sized photo of the customer and their national ID, and a passport for refugees and others.
The SIM cards are given for free. Use of fictitious identity card numbers in most cases, therefore not resulting in registration but the sale of the same. SIM cards are sold without the presentation of an identification document and no verification is actually done. These findings were based on the inspections that was carried out undercover by the authority. And accordingly, the authority directed operators to take the necessary steps to ensure full compliance of the law on SIM card registration.
The government also accelerated the rollout of the National Optic Fiber Backbone Infrastructure Project. Kenya welcomed the 6th submarine fiber cable worth 44 billion shillings, dubbed Peace Cable, connecting Pakistan, Kenya, Egypt, France, and countries along the way, with an extension to Singapore and South Africa. The cable has a design capacity of 16 terabytes per second and is expected to last 25 years. In the same year, the Konza Technopolis managed to beat Canada in a final round to bid to host the International Association of Science Parks and Areas of Innovation, slated for 2024. The conference will bring together more than 100,000 IT experts to discuss the future of smart cities in the world. The Technopolis also rolled out Phase 2 of the Smart City following the completion of Phase 1.
Hosting this community or network of science parks is going to be very impactful to our country. We are going to be able to bring the best minds to visit Kenya. We are able to connect the science community in our country, and it will actually bring a new change in the science technology space of our country.
Alanako, India Review.
The Russian-Ukraine war that began in February was perhaps the biggest event globally that would disrupt fuel and commodity prices, as well as strengthen currencies of most countries. The war disrupted the global supply chain, impeding the flow of goods, fueling dramatic cost increases, and drove up inflation in most countries. Duta Mukami highlights what made headlines across the globe in the year 2022.
One of the most alarming supply chain issues resulting from the Russia-Ukraine war in 2022 was food shortages that was particularly acute in low-income countries. This is because Ukraine and Russia account for about a third of the world's wheat and a quarter of barley production, in addition to some 75% of the sunflower oil supply. This has had ripple effects on low-income countries that largely depend on Russia and Ukraine's food items, coupled with the recent devastating climatic changes occurring, which seriously disadvantaged low-income countries. Crude oil prices sharply rose in March as the war between Russia and Ukraine stoked fears of supply disruptions. Brent crude prices hit $139.13 a barrel in March, the highest level since July 2008, when they hit their all-time high of $147 per barrel. This prompted Western countries such as the US, UK, and other European countries into banning imports of Russian oil, natural gas, and coal. The fallout from the invasion of Ukraine threatened to badly hamper the world energy supply and caused seriously financial pain at the pumps for consumers. The increased cost continually weighed down both business balance sheets and home budgets and forced some governments to subsidize fuel in attempts to alleviate the burden. The war in Ukraine also led to the largest commodity price increases since the 1973 oil crisis. This was due to a blockage of Ukrainian grains and oilseed exports via Black Sea ports, including 4 million tons of wheat, 3 million tons of sunflower oil, and over 10 million tons of corn. As a result, global grain and oilseed supplies have tightened and prices skyrocketed, directly affecting Middle East and African countries, which are the key importers of Ukrainian grains. Besides the war blocking Ukrainian exports, it has largely damaged Ukrainian winter and spring crops, which normally come into the markets in July for wheat and October for corn and sunflower oil. It also reduced global crop production and supplies for the upcoming season. In early March, Russia temporarily suspended fertilizer exports. The announcement followed an earlier ban on ammonium nitrate to guarantee supplies to domestic farmers, causing a disruption in the supply chain, thereby hampering agricultural productivity. This saw the prices of food and fertilizer rising by 84% and 222% respectively. Global inflation was forecast to rise from 4.7% in 2021 to 8.8% in 2022 as the global economic activity experienced a broad-based and sharper than expected slowdown. Global inflation was higher than seen in several decades, attributed to the cost of living crisis, tightening financial conditions in most regions, Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and the lingering COVID-19 pandemic that weighed heavily on the outlook. In the UK, inflation hit a 41-year high of 11.1%, driven up by high food, transport, and energy prices. In the US, the rate of inflation rose to 7.7% in October, the highest figure since 1982. Other countries that saw their rate of inflation soar were Zimbabwe at 269%, Lebanon at 158%, Venezuela at 156%, Syria at 139%, Sudan at 103%, Argentina at 88%, Turkey at 85.51%, and Sri Lanka at 66%. This year also saw Tesla founder Elon Musk successfully buy Twitter in a $44 billion deal. Musk put down $21 billion in cash and chose to finance the rest through a new debt, comprising of a $13 billion buyout loan and a $12.5 billion margin loan against his stock in Tesla. The acquisition of Twitter by Elon Musk began on April when he made an offer to purchase the company and concluded in October. But this was not without drama. In July, Musk announced his intention to terminate the agreement, asserting that Twitter had breached their agreement by refusing to crack down on bot accounts. This saw the company filing a lawsuit. But weeks before the trial began, Musk reversed course and closed the deal on the 27th of October, making Twitter private. Upon acquiring Twitter, Musk promptly fired several top executives, including the CEO. He also laid off half of the company's workforce, and hundreds of the company's employees then resigned. The layoffs were not only limited to Twitter. Other ICT companies also sent home employees. Days after Twitter slashed the workforce, Facebook parent Meta announced its most significant round of layoffs ever, targeting more than 11,000 employees on declining revenue. Digital advertisers were cutting back on spending as rising inflation curbs consumer spending, and apps like Facebook suffered from Apple's iOS privacy update, which limited ad targeting. Netflix announced 2 rounds of layoffs. In May, the streaming service eliminated 150 jobs after Netflix reported its first subscriber loss in a decade. In late June, Netflix announced another 300 layoffs. In October, Microsoft confirmed that it let go of less than 1% of its employees, impacting 1,000 people. In June, Tesla said the company was cutting 10% of salaried workers, attributing the layoff to overstaffing in many areas of the company. And chaos in the digital currencies continued after the collapse of multi-billion cryptocurrency exchange FTX, which filed for bankruptcy protection in November, citing failure of a possible merger with rival crypto exchange Binance, which left investors and creditors facing billions of dollars in losses. The actions of a single crypto firm, the $32 billion exchange FTX, plunged the emerging industry into its own version of a 2008-style crisis. The news sent shockwaves through the digital assets market, with cryptocurrencies falling sharply. Bitcoin fell by more than 10% to hit the lowest level since November 2020 to below $16,000. Reporting for NDR 2022, my name is Nduta Mokami.
Well, from deepening intra-regional trade to courting the West as well as Asian giant, Kenya moved to deepen its position on the global arena. President William Ruto, as well as the former President Uhuru Kenyatta, made various trips around the world to encourage more countries to have trade agreements with Kenya. Here are the highlights of Kenya's foreign policy in the year 2022, as highlighted by our reporter, Hibak.
Late last year, Kenya sought to simplify exit and entry formalities at its border with Ethiopia in order to make it easier for small businesses to trade. Kenya exports to Ethiopia as of 2021 stood at $106.11 million, while imports from Ethiopia were valued at $15.29 million.
We as governments are here to support our people to do business. We are not in the business of doing business. Ours is to facilitate the people of our countries to do business.
The Moyale OSBP, launched by then President Uhuru Kenyatta and Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, was operationalized in March this year. This opened way for relocation of border regulatory officials to Moyale, straddling each side of the border, sealing the deal for a free trade area between the two countries.
And all of these is just to continue to strengthen the partnership between our two countries, to increase the volume of trade between our two countries, to increase the level of investment between our two countries, and to tighten even further the bonds of friendship between our two people.
The OSBP became the first for Ethiopia and the fifth for Kenya, and would form a leeway into increasing efforts towards achieving the Africa Continental Free Trade Area.
What we want, brothers and sisters, is to see a deepening of the integration between our two countries. And you, the people who live on this border, the people of Kenya here in Moyale, the people of Ethiopia here in Moyale, have a central role to play to strengthen that relationship, that partnership.
This deal was closely followed by Kenya's Venture West, seeking to expand her horizons towards the 92 million people rich Democratic Republic of Congo. By April this year, Kenya's former President Uhuru Kenyatta had forged deals with his counterpart in DRC, Felix Tshisekedi, with the aim of mapping opportunities in bilateral trade, investment, and agriculture. Kenya sent a trade delegation to DRC, consisting of officials from the Ministries of Trade and Agriculture and members of the business community.
I believe it is a moment of rare regional and continental pride as we witness our local enterprises coming together in the spirit of one Africa, one people.
The bilateral agreement on cooperation in agriculture was signed by DRC's ministers for agriculture and fisheries and livestock and Kenya's then Cabinet Secretary for Foreign Affairs, Rachel Omamo. The DRC had joined the East African Trading Bloc, but the formalization process was incomplete. This, however, did not deter trade deals in the private sector. The trade deal sought to increase, among many other things, crop development and promotion, agricultural and livestock research, animal health and production, and collaboration in aquaculture and the blue economy.
His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Kenya, tumpongeze kwa makofi.
With August came a new dawn. A new regime where Dr. William Ruto took power as the President of the Republic of Kenya. Part of his manifesto said to boost exportation of locally manufactured products by strategically establishing trade ties with trade partners and setting up corresponding export centers in their countries.
Because of the agricultural sector's natural robust linkages, other key pillars of our transformational agenda, that is manufacturing and the micro and small enterprise, strongly feature actors in the agricultural value chain.
To bring this to life, President Ruto immediately hosted East African heads to establish a working arrangement. The newly sworn-in president began his first day in office on a high note, hosting Sudan's President Salva Kiir and Somalia's President Hassan Sheikh Mahmoud at State House. They discussed various areas of cooperation, including security and regional infrastructure development that would in the long term promote intra-African trade through the strengthening of the East African community and other regional economic blocs in the continent. For Somalia, President Ruto assured of easier movement of key trade commodities, such as miraa and fish. The sights thereafter were set on South Africa in November, where President Cyril Ramaphosa jetted into the country, ironing out trade barriers and pushing to increase business and cooperation with President William Ruto. The main focus was reducing non-tariff barriers, such as licensing bureaucracy and regulation restrictions and sanctions, that would allow the opening up of industrial and agricultural produce export and logistics.
There are definite opportunities for South Africa and Kenya to share experiences and good practice in the implementation of these various economic opportunities that are given rise to by the plans that we both have adopted.
It is during this meeting that the countries resolved to balance out the trade, which leans in favor of South Africa, including visa adjustments from next year, meant to ease travel between the two countries.
Kenyans holding ordinary passports will be allowed to enter South Africa on a visa-free regime for up to 90 days per calendar year.
Kenya and South Africa signed 3 memoranda of understanding and 1 agreement of cooperation of correctional sciences on the field of housing and human settlement, and cooperation between Kenya's School of Government and the National School of Governments from South Africa, as well as the agreement on audiovisual co-production. Within the same month, Kenya focused on strengthening ties with South Korea. Bilateral trade between both countries is worth $330 million, while Kenya's exports to the Asian country only accounting for $30 million. To this effect, South Korea moved to invest 120 billion shillings in agriculture, ICT, health, energy, infrastructure, education, affordable housing, and urban transport.
And we are seeking to build on that platform to elevate to the next level. There are already discussions that have gone on, extensive discussions. We intend, with my visit, to consolidate the discussions that we've already had, so that using technology, we can push our country to the next level.
Further, the countries agreed to collaborate in establishing manufacturing plants in the Konza Technopolis, an export promotion zone dedicated to pharmaceutical manufacturing, vaccines production, and ensuring value addition in the agricultural sector.
We must move from 5% of processed tea to 50%. And then in the next 10 years, we should be processing every gram of tea leaving Kenya. That way, we will not only double our value of tea, but we will triple, maybe even quadruple, the number of jobs that we create in that space.
President William Ruto, while meeting with South Korean President Kim Jin-pyo in Seoul, urged the South Korean parliament to pass legislation that would ease trade between the two countries and secure job opportunities for Kenyans.
We want to set up a mechanism that is approved and understood by the government of Korea, so that we can have opportunities for Kenya to work here legally, in a structured manner.
Reporting for end of year 2022, I am Hibak Said.
Major infrastructural projects were completed and commissioned, especially the Nairobi Expressway just right behind me here. Other projects include the Kipevu Oil Terminal and the Western Bypass. These are some of the projects that the government commissioned in the year 2022, plus more that are going to be highlighted by our reporter, Fred Muoki.
Infrastructure plays an integral role in the growth of a country's economy. In 2022, the government commissioned various infrastructure projects, including the Kipevu Oil Terminal in Mombasa County, the Kisumu Port, and the Nairobi Expressway. After a record 24 months of construction, the Nairobi Expressway was commissioned for public use. The highway, which has faced a decade of delays due to funding and contractual problems, promised to decongest the notoriously jam-clogged Mombasa Road, reducing by half the travel time between Nairobi's Central Business District and the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport. The 27-kilometer expressway was constructed by the China Road and Bridge Corporation on a public-private partnership basis at a cost of 73.5 billion shillings.
Wananchi wenzangu, tumpongeze Mheshimiwa Rais Uhuru Kenyatta baada ya uzinduzi rasmi wa the Nairobi Expressway.
And on the 31st of July, the road was commissioned by retired President Uhuru Kenyatta. According to the contractor CRBC, the construction of the expressway created more than 6,000 direct jobs, benefiting 200 subcontractors and hundreds of other local suppliers of building materials such as steel, sand, cement, and ballast. More than 17,000 vehicles use the expressway on a daily basis. A drive on the highway costs between 120 to 360 shillings, depending on the exit gate and the type of vehicle. Another key infrastructural project which was commissioned in the year was the Kipevu Oil Terminal in Mombasa County. The 40 billion shillings project is expected to enhance the supply of petroleum products and ensure the price stability of the commodity in Kenya and the region. The construction of the 770-meter-long jetty was wholly funded by the Kenya Ports Authority and implemented by China Communications Construction Company. The new terminal has the ability to hold and offload volumes from 4 vessels, 3 petroleum and 1 LPG at once, hence saving on the vessel waiting time.
Of time and some limits, we devised our way to reduce.
Meanwhile, the revival of the Kisumu Port was another ambitious project by the government, which saw the flotation of the newly constructed MV Uhuru's 2 vessel in Lake Victoria. The 100-meter vessel, with a capacity of carrying up to 22 wagons and an estimated capacity of 2 million liters of crude oil per trip, was the first ship to be made in Kenya by the Kenyan Shipyard Company. The rehabilitation of the Lake Victoria port cost the government 3 billion shillings. The vessel transports petroleum products from Kisumu Port to Port Bell in Uganda, taking approximately 19 hours for the 244 miles journey. In the energy sector, the country's quest to tap green energy received a major boost after former President Uhuru Kenyatta commissioned an additional unit at Olkaria 1 geothermal plant in Naivasha. The unit, with an installed capacity of 83 megawatts, raised the capacity of KenGen's installed energy to 1,904 megawatts, with its geothermal capacity standing at 799 megawatts. President Kenyatta also operationalized the 172 megawatts Olkaria V geothermal power project, whose construction was completed in 2019, accelerating Kenya's plan to transition to green energy. In the railway subsector, the construction of the Kisumu railway station was completed and opened to public use.
As well as job opportunities for hundreds of thousands of people through growth of primary and ancillary manufacturing industries, improved transport and safety on the lake, and enhanced intermodular transport, but more so will boost our fishing, our tourism, and other economic activities in the Lake Basin region.
Former Transport Cabinet Secretary James Macharia said the restoration of the rail transport in Kisumu will lower the cost of ferrying goods along the line and stimulate the growth of industries in the lakeside county of Kisumu. The health sector also received a major boost following the opening of an integrated molecular imaging and hospitality center at the Kenyatta University Teaching, Referral and Research Hospital. The center, touted as a game changer in the first of its kind in Kenya and the region, is part of Kenya's grand plan to create an African medical tourism hub. The new cancer treatment center, which is equipped with a 100-person hostel facility, will save Kenyans the over 10 billion shillings they spend on cancer treatment outside the country annually. The year also saw the official opening of the Ruru Gardens after almost 2 years of construction by the Kenya Defence Forces. Ruru Gardens will act as an archive of Kenya's histories since 1800, sitting on a 68-acre piece of land in Lang'ata, 15 minutes from Nairobi city centre. The museum includes a Hall of Legends, Tunnel of Matthias, the rope gallery of the museum dedicated to every one of the 1,090 heroic people that were hanged during the colonial era, and the Hall of Innovation to celebrate the brilliant and life-changing ideas produced by Kenyans.
My high privilege and profound honor on the eve of the 59th anniversary of Madaraka Day to declare the Uhuru Gardens National Monument and Museum inaugurated, open, and to call upon those who come to continue this great work and immortalize the past for the benefit of our future.
These are some of the major projects that were commissioned in 2022. All eyes will be on the government in the next financial year, as citizens will be eagerly waiting to see whether the government will launch and implement other infrastructure projects in a bid to revitalize the economy. Reporting for KBC Channel 1 from Nairobi, my name is Frederick Mwoki.
We continue our analysis, and now, for the last time, I'm engaging with Peter Macharia. He has been with us, helping us understand the year in review and, of course, making projections for the year 2023. Well, Mr. Macharia, turning on to the project that were commissioned in the agriculture sector, the Viba Dam, which is expected to more than double rice production in Mwea irrigation scheme, was completed and commissioned. What will be the impact of this in the Kenya's agriculture industry?
Thank you. Viba Dam will increase the production of rice, and by extension, it will also improve our balance of payments, which will improve the Kenyan economy, because 90% of the rice that we consume locally is imported from India and Pakistan. Mm-hmm. But now, with the increased rice production, we will tilt the scales from an importer of rice to an exporter of rice. Mm-hmm. And that's a very big plus to the agricultural sector, the local farmers, and our balance of trade internationally.
Mm-hmm. We are yet to see what the new administration or the areas of investment when it comes to the Kenya Kwanza administration. Which areas do you see the government investing more in the year 2023?
Number one is agriculture. They've already started with a very huge impetus on that by giving agricultural subsidies, supporting the farmers, and helping reduce the gap on maize consumption. Number two is security. They've really supported the security sector by ensuring that our men in uniform are well catered for. They have enough houses to ensure that their housing is well catered for. They have enough cars to enable them, facilitate them in movement. And then the third one is the judiciary. The judiciary has their own budget. Even the police also, they have their own budget and their accounting officer.
Going forward, as we come to the end of this conversation, what do you think will shape the infrastructure sector in the year 2023?
The new government is really working on that also. They're also doing additional airports. They opened an airport the other day, the one for Kakamega Airport. And they've also increased and improved they've facilitated additional or uplifting of the Mombasa airport from an airport that was only receiving the local airlines, but now they're able to receive the international airlines and even international tourists. So by and large, they've really put their best foot forward to ensure that the cost of living is reduced, the lifestyle of most Kenyans is uplifted, and they are really facilitating all the agencies and government agencies to help them work together for the betterment of all Kenyans and a better country in the future.
Peter Macharia, thank you very much indeed for joining us and of course helping us with your insight. And we take this opportunity to wish you Merry Christmas and of course prosperous 2023.
Thank you. Merry Christmas and a prosperous New Year too.
That is Peter Macharia, an economist, a financial analyst as well as the CEO of Jijenge Credit, joining us here to put more perspective in the year 2022 in the eyes of the economy. My name is O'Brien Kimani. We've discussed much and of course we have highlighted more. We'll do so again next year, that is the year 2023. Thank you very much for your time. Merry Christmas and a happy as well as prosperous year 2023 from me and the rest of the team. Bye-bye.